There we are. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. And today I am joined for the first time in the since we started In Conversation With, I'm joined by a student for the first time. I'm delighted to be joined by Mel, who in a second will introduce herself. But what we're hoping for this conversation is that we're going to be able to share some of the experiences in the learning arena before someone crosses over into the big bad world that is the therapeutic community. So I hope you're staying with us for the episode. Enjoy the conversation, and if you have any benefit from the conversation, by all means go to the website, get hold of the CPD questionnaire, fill that in, get that back. You benefit from the CPD experience from this conversation. So, with all that said, Mel, good afternoon. Thank you for joining me.
Hi.
How are you?
I am very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I'm really looking forward to kind of getting some real live feed on what's happening in the education arena as you're going through it. I suppose the first thing is kind of let the audience have a bit of an insight into kind of you, the background, and why the therapy world for you.
Okay, well, I've worked in the charity sector for over the last 7 years in a counselling organisation, and I was the office manager for part of that as well. So that gave me a lot of insight into the counselling world. I think I probably wanted to be a counsellor before that, maybe not necessarily for the right reasons. I put it off for quite some time, various reasons for that, but just also wanting to make sure that I was very ready for it, but also because I knew it wasn't going to necessarily be an easy journey and there might be lots of barriers. So last year I did an intro course and I did a foundation certificate, and then I'm hoping I'll be able to continue my training at university in September, but I do currently have some funding issues, so we'll see. So I'm at very early stages of my training, so I hope that I can help share my experiences so far, but yeah, still early stages really for me.
Okay, so you said from the experience that you had within the counselling arena, some of the kind of hesitations, if you like, were the perception that there may be barriers for you. What were the kind of things that you were seeing as those potential barriers?
I guess the main one was financial barriers, because it's expensive. However you do, I was just seeing it. I don't know how I'm going to be able to afford that at all. Another barrier was maybe my age, although that's not really too much of a problem anymore. I'm 37, and I think that a lot of people training were around my age. Before that, when I was considering it when I was around 30, I had the sort of perception that I was too young, or I was literally told that I was too young. I don't think that's particularly fair, because I don't think it's really to do with age. I think it's more to do with your experiences and your self-awareness, and so no one can really say what the right age is. I also didn't really see people who looked like me or were like me in the counselling world. I'm from Stoke-on-Trent, and although I'm I found myself in this place of being quite working class, but now living in Bristol and feeling a little bit between it, not really knowing where I fit in that. But I guess I was surrounded by sort of middle class, middle-aged people, and I was just like, where do I fit in that?
Yeah. Do you find that kind of perception of self and wanting to kind of belong and a sense almost that you'll be able to fit in is something that is more important before you go through the self-awareness journey?
I mean, yes, I suppose it might be. I guess everybody's journey is sort of different, and I'd done some of that work before my training and had a fair bit of counselling before. I mean, which is why I wanted to go into it, really. I think having a lot of counselling myself sort of made me want to do it. Although the training has been a wonderful extension of that. And there's no doubt my own personal journey has also been questioning this, where do I belong, and unpicking that. I also thought that before I started my training that I might not be able to be the sort of rebel and activist that I am, and might need to put that aside. And I sort of tried to put that in a bit of a box, actually, when I started my foundation certificate, and I could not keep it in the box. Obviously, that's a big part of me, and it was not going to work to contain. So I'm now sort of building this identity of the sort of therapist that I'll be, I guess. And I mean, I've got another 3 years to continue figuring that out as well.
I think all of us within the therapeutic arena are on that journey. It's called life. We're always trying to work out, our own awareness, but also our connectivity to the world around us, and how we can continue to be us with the lessons that we've had along the way, either through choice or through exposure. And we work tirelessly, and that's something that kind of you picked up on before. That this is hard work. This isn't, it used to be called tea and sympathy, but that's not what the counselling arena is. It's certainly not what the coaching arena is. But I suppose when you kind of started out on your journey, the first kind of formal education part of that journey, how do you kind of feel that first kind of set of lessons, if you like, have stuck with you? Or has it just been kind of one of those steps to go through in order to get where you are now?
Sorry, it was breaking up a little bit then. Wait, can you just repeat the last part of the question again?
Okay, so those first few lessons, the formal lessons in the journey that you've been on, how much of that has stuck with you, and how much of it feels as though they were steps that you just had to get through in order to continue the journey?
I don't think any of it so far has felt like they've just been steps to get to the next bit. I've not personally been rushing through this. I'm quite keen to go quite slowly through this as I explore and learn more about myself. And the course that I did was very experiential, so it was fantastic in that sense. I think every part of this journey is so important. I wouldn't necessarily be doing it to jump through hoops in terms of the actual training is concerned. And I think before I started training, I had done kind of a lot of work in terms of having counselling before, reading, doing quite a lot of travelling, having quite a lot of self-reflection. I'm a writer as well, so being a writer is very good self-reflection. Yeah. I think for anyone going into training, it's important for them to know that there is a lot of work that can be done before you go into, to sort of prepare yourself to start having that self-awareness, to learn more about yourself. That can be done through writing and creativity. Like, all of that was important for me to do before I started on my training courses.
Okay, so you said you were told outright, you are too young to be going into this. How did that make you feel at the moment it was said?
It just rather belittled, to be honest. Yeah, it did just make me feel rather immature, and it wasn't particularly nice at all. But then I kind of reflected on that and thought, well, there's something in it. It did make me question myself for a while, and every time it sort of popped into my head and I'd start Googling courses again, I'd find a way to talk myself out of it. I suppose having sort of quite low self-esteem before that anyway, it only really tagged on to that to make it slightly worse.
Yeah, it's almost like a kind of a pressure point already, and it just reinforces that pressure point. Whether it was the right intent and wrong delivery, ultimately, because of the type of individual that you have become, to be able to question that and look at that from multiple layers rather than just I'm too young and take the blanket, thank you very much, I'm too young, okay, I'll come back in 10 years. You know, this is not the X factor. The learning that you've been through has obviously kept you motivated to stay within the sector. What would you say your highlight of the learning is so far?
My highlight for learning. Oh, that's a hard one. It feels like it's been a whole experience for the last year that is so well-rounded that it's very hard to pinpoint. I had this when I was finishing my course a few weeks ago, just like, what is it specifically that I've learned? And I think it's very hard with anything that involves so much reflection and personal growth to just pinpoint it to one thing. I mean, there's certain books that had a real impact on me in terms of my course. Actually, just practicing it and doing skills practice triad sessions. I remember I did the sort of 10-week introduction to counselling course that you can do at colleges, and they threw us straight in on day one, just give it a go. And we were like, we haven't got a clue what we're doing. It was actually a really good way to learn, by just giving it a go and talking and listening to people, because that's what it's all going to be about, isn't it? Like forming this relationship. So forming those relationships in that way was great.
Okay. Is there, and this is going to sound kind of, you know, that we really want to open this box, but is there a low point that you've been through so far in the training?
Yes. There's the logistical, financial those sorts of things of the difficulties of affording training, and the current difficulties that I'm having with getting student finance. So there's those sorts of things. And then there's the emotional low points as well, which there really will be. And I knew that going into counselling training would open all the boxes with all the worms, and I'd have to jump into those worms and have a good swim around, and I'll continue to do that. So yeah, there's been really low points. I think largely for me, to be completely honest as well, thinking, am I going to be good enough to be a counsellor? Can I actually do it? Have I got my own stuff worked out enough? Because I think that's the perception, isn't it, of like being a counsellor, you have to have your own stuff all worked out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's self-doubt. I know self-doubt's a big problem for a lot of trainees.
And the thing with self-doubt, as you may or may not have reached the awareness of, is something that then leads to imposter syndrome and more self-doubt and more imposter syndrome and more and it becomes that cycle. And when any professional of any industry is caught up on that, it has a direct impact on their own well-being, it impacts on their own productivity in whatever field they're in. But certainly within the psychological field, it should remind absolutely everybody of the importance of the peer support and supervision, and effective supervision. I don't mean kind of line management case supervision where we're working within, you know, that kind of arena of employment, but having that network around us from as early as possible within the journey. Because as soon as that seed is sown, it needs to be nurtured in the right way. Otherwise, it's a bit like Japanese knotweed. It gets out of its box and it's all over the place. You can't actually contain it anymore. So looking forward to September and degree level study, what are you excited about?
I'm excited about being able to do it full time and dedicate most of my time to it. Because with my other course it was 1 day a week, and I've just been itching just to do more than that, just read all the books, really get going. Because my last course was really experiential, I'm looking forward to something a little bit more academic as well. And just to try and, I mean, it's scary at the same time. It's really scary. I've not got a degree. I don't know what it's like really to be in that kind of education, but I'm guessing everybody else on my course is going to be in the same boat. But yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to do something a bit more academic, and for it to be 3 years, it feels like that's a good long time to really, I mean, even if it was longer, I would be more than happy going into this journey. So I'm really excited about it, but at the moment, I'm still waiting to confirm if I actually have the finance to do it, which is quite difficult, but I'm hopeful.
So looking at the sector as it is in the real world, what are your hopes for your place within it 3 years from now?
It's quite an interesting time, I think, to be training, because with a lot of all the COVID things that's happened recently, I think it's pushed so many people to working online. So I'm seeing that the counselling industry is going to be really different in like going forward from now. There'll be way more online counsellors, which is a good thing for me, because I'm quite happy to work online. I quite like those sorts of ways of doing it. I guess it might change the training in that sense. Part of my training was online, busting quite a lot of myths around how it can't be done online. I think some maybe can. And then with Scope, so Scope Ed, it's going to potentially change a lot of things as well, and is leaving a lot of trainees. From the people that I've been seeing talking about it on Twitter, it's leaving quite a lot of trainees unsure of where we'll be at. So to be honest, I don't know, but I am hopeful to be able to have maybe an online private practice, as well as maybe working in some kind of charity-based organisation as well. That's personally what I would probably like to do.
Okay. I'm just touching on Scope Ed. It is the dominant conversation within the field, and I think I'm probably safe to say that it's almost become the runaway train conversation, because ultimately Scope Ed is a system within a membership body. It would only apply to members of that membership body, and as there is no governing body, employers' understanding of the role of a membership body is increasingly being made more aware of. But Scope Ed is a membership body system. And the power of the professional and student is, in regards to membership bodies, where do they feel most comfortable? Where do they fit? Rather than what I suspect is a guided message that says students have to be with one or other membership body and nothing else is spoken about, because that reinforces that, in essence, it is an abuse of power, because students and professionals have a voluntary right to choose the membership body of their choice and not be guided to one or other or any. But it seems as though within the education arena, that awareness, that strength of your right to choose doesn't come across that often. Is that fair to say?
In my experience, I've only recently learned that there is a choice, to be honest. It's just, otherwise there are, you know, the courses that I was recommended or that I looked at, I always knew that they had to be with certain membership bodies, and that it wasn't worth maybe even looking at them if they weren't, you know, if you weren't going to get accreditation. So it was never even sort of in my vision for it to be a choice. And now realizing that, I'm like, well, a lot of that power is actually out of our control. And a lot of students who maybe don't have that much control over even the place that we study, because a lot of that could maybe just come down to location and where you can afford to train. Yeah, it is largely taking the power away from students. Actually, I hope that in the future, with the way that we're moving now, with more options and more choice, that we'll be able to have more control over that.
And I think students, as you know, UCAS has recently kind of estimated kind of between 9,000 and I think it was just under 12,000 students a year across the country taking up courses to do with psychological, psychology, counselling, psychotherapy. That's a huge number of people that historically and currently are being guided in a particular direction that maintains the status quo. But if the status quo created the mental health crisis that the country is in, then surely the status quo isn't fit for purpose. And students have a huge opportunity to be able to reach past the barriers that are being put in front of them and saying, actually, hold on a minute, that doesn't make sense, it doesn't fit, and it doesn't create a world in which the aims of therapy are able to be delivered, because you're anchored, you're stuck, you can't make a choice. And if that relationship was a client coming in saying, my partner, and then describes the relationship that we have with our status quo membership bodies, I don't think there'd be a single professional that would be saying this is healthy. And for students to be able to say that right from the very beginning and say, actually, do you know what, that's not a healthy relationship for us to be getting involved with, I think it puts the power back into students' hands. And it's one of the reasons why APA created the Endorsed Learning Collection that we're developing this year. So professionals, will be able to say this is a training provider that goes beyond the status quo, and then give students that opportunity when they're looking for courses to say, actually, do I want the status quo, or do I want something that's going to give me a broader set of options? If you were being in a position to kind of ask professionals before getting into the courses, what would you like to have known before going down that road?
I guess for me, actually, I did have the opportunity to, well, I had the opportunity to ask professionals, as in people in the counselling industry who I worked with, not necessarily from any membership body. I don't think I would have really had the questions then, because I wouldn't have realised. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't have thought there was any other choice. The professionals that I did speak to were very much reinforcing this idea of there is a particular membership body that you have to be with, and that's it. Yeah, I guess now it's a different world. I would want to be able to kind of have the choice of somewhere that would be better representative of the sort of therapist that I would want to be. So yeah, I'm not sure that really answers your question, because I suppose
and that's the thing, because maybe there isn't one, because like you say, at that point, are we equipped? Do we know enough to be able to formulate those questions? But what's telling is that the sector is maintaining the presentation of the status quo to those that are coming through. And that in itself, to my mind, is the equivalent of going to that client that I've just outlined and saying, no, this is the relationship that you should be in. This is the kind of relationship where your partner can tell you when you can work, how you can work, which way to work. Yeah, that environment is the complete opposite environment to the therapeutic principle. And it's quite telling that the sector itself is perpetuating that myth and maintaining that for people coming in. But again, it's about how much awareness there is. And maybe that's something that the sector kind of needs to look at, but also, is it something that the education sector needs to look at in its presentation to students? You know, how would students feel if, you know, within, you know, their course there is a presentation of here's what's available to you out there, and it's your choice as to the path that you choose, rather than this is the path, you choose it.
I think you're absolutely right that those questions and yeah, that questioning is only really coming up quite late when you've already chosen your course, when you're already on that path. I think it's confusing enough for people considering going into counselling training. They're probably not thinking about membership bodies. I mean, I wasn't. I was more thinking about where can I train? Where's local to me? What can I afford? So I don't think it's even in their world at the time for, and that's probably where an increased awareness of it would bring that in so much earlier, and would affect choices throughout training.
Yeah, no, and it's certainly something that you know, as we've talked about, it's certainly something that APA is dedicated to working on raising that awareness earlier within the student field and the educational arena. The kind of question that has been kind of sitting at the back of my mind for the last kind of sort of day or so in preparing to come and speak to you was the students that you've encountered, the people that choose to come into this profession. Would you say that there can be such a passion to help that the self-awareness is missed?
Yes, sometimes. Maybe not so much on my maybe not really on my foundation certificate course. I think their interview process was a lot around making sure that you had those kind of reflective processes going on. But before that, and certainly in the places that I've worked, we've had a lot of inquiries from students. So it's mainly in the workplace that I've seen this. quite a lot of emails of people really just want to volunteer, really want to give back. Can I be a volunteer counsellor? Can I volunteer on a helpline? Those sorts of questions. I see them quite a lot. I've got a couple of different jobs in the charity sector. Yeah, that's where it concerns me a little, and it kind of saddens me because there's so many people that want to help. They really want to help. Something may have triggered that wanting to volunteer in the moment, but I think there's a lot of naivety. There's sort of I'm a nice person, I can listen. I think if this was me like 10 or 15 years ago, I might have done the same, to be honest, I'm a nice person, I can help, I can listen, that's enough. And I suppose that's why I thought very carefully before starting training, because I realised that it was going to be more to do with the place that I was at. And if I was ready, if I was really ready to, open all my own cans of worms and sort through all my own stuff and reflect on myself and build my self-awareness as well. So yeah, I think it's well-meaning naivety with some people.
Yeah, I think in a large part, again, the sector has created the perception that that's where the starting point is, and we take away that self-awareness, or we have done in the past. I think the fact that in the conversations you and I have had, it's evident that self-work, that self-examination, and that reflective kind of essence is already there within you before you got to that point. Do you think it's something that should be included right from the very beginning of those conversations when somebody comes into the training arena? That self-awareness has to be right at the fore of this? Or is it something that let's get some understanding in and then introduce it? Which way round do you think that should go?
I mean, in my training journey, it was very important from the start, because it was a very experiential, really promoting reflection and self-awareness. So it was right from the start. I personally wouldn't do it any other way. I'd say it's not actually from the start, but it's prior to it as well. Because I think the great thing about having lots of well-meaning people who want to go into the industry is that is the important starting point of wanting to help. But then I took that and kind of went on to reading a lot of stuff, doing a lot of journaling, a lot of writing, having my own counselling. So a lot of that work can be done before going into a course, which I think is really, really important to do before you even go into it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 10-week like introduction to counselling courses are really great actually for giving. Mine was great for giving an insight into what the training would be like and to see if I was ready. But it does help to do some work before that as well, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we as an organisation, we work overseas with organisations that are developing their education arenas around counselling. And one of the things that we advocate, and we advocate for the right across the UK, is that every course that puts somebody at level 4 and above includes mandatory therapy, and not a 10-week let's look at the therapy in the context of your course, but independent therapy for that individual. Do you think that's something that the UK would benefit from across the board on therapeutic education, or do you think it's something that is kind of the optional for the individual?
I think therapy has to be included for everyone in all of it. Although the difficulty is that it's making it even more expensive. So that's the difficulty of like on my course, I had to have 35 sessions of counselling for my foundation certificate. That's probably quite a lot. Some other courses I saw just said that you had to have 10 sessions. Some of the courses you don't have to have any. That's really worrying for me. I personally don't know just my own personal opinion, I don't know how you can want to be a therapist if you haven't had it yourself. I mean, it's not just so that you get to sit in the client's chair and you get to sort of see what the experience is like for them. That's really important. But it's just having worked through everything in your own life, even if you think you haven't had a difficult life or been through any trauma, there is always stuff that needs to be examined. So I think I kind of want to say it's absolutely important at every stage of training, at least the first few years. I'm also mindful of cost, though. I would really like there to be a way that is accessible for people without piling on the cost too much.
And that's again something that comes down to the management process around that system, and there are ways and means that can be done, and that is being done in certain other countries. I think it's great to be able to kind of get some insight from the journey that you've been on, and the fact that in so many ways there are so many positives that have been kind of woven through the experience that you've had. The hope that you've shared of being able to work within the field and to be able to develop private practice, whether that's online as is your choice, or not, and kind of blend those options, I think is admirable, because you're not looking at one direction, one dimension of support for the future. And as the world moves more to a digital point of reference with therapy, do you think that there is scope within that allows for alternative kind of crossover therapies, art therapies, music therapy, drama therapy, all of these kind of what I would call supportive therapeutic processes? And I'm sure there are people that will jump up and go, it's not supportive, it does the job. But as a layering of support, by having an online presence as well as a live presence, we're able to actually maximize the support.
I think it's something that can work in addition to, nothing is going to take away face-to-face counselling. It's just that now we've got this whole other world that is opening up and giving us more opportunities. There's lots of things. When my course was moving online near the end, I was just like, how is this going to work? But it did. It's amazing. We can make things work. There's no doubt that different people within different therapies can make it work, make something work for them in some way.
Yeah.
I think it's an opportunity, really.
Fabulous. Well, look, thank you so much for your time today. It's really kind of given my brain neurons a lot of time to kind of start firing and kind of focus on some of the things that you've talked about. I hope everyone that has been sharing this conversation with us has benefited from. So for now, I would just like to kind of offer you the opportunity, if there is anything that you want to kind of share, anything that you want to kind of put out there to the professionals about how they can impact on the education journey, what would it be?
I suppose my personal slant on this is that I think it's incredibly important to recognise our own privileges within the industry. And so I recently wrote an article about elitism within counselling and psychotherapy, and I was amazed about how much it was shared by people who are very established therapists as well. And it did kind of make me think maybe there's a self-awareness, and there's a focus on unpicking assumptions in training, but I'm not sure that the training is really doing enough to promote really talking about racism and transphobia and building enough awareness of those sort of, prejudices which are major in our society at the moment. So yeah, I would like to sort of encourage anyone at any stage, and especially like maybe trainees as well now, that we have to extend it to looking at our privilege in society, so that we can be sort of critical of ourselves, of where we sit in the form of class and transphobia and racism. And that was very important for me to say.
Yeah, no, and it's great that you mentioned it, and I'm really glad that you did, because we our birthday party on the 4th of July, we were joined by the owner and managing director of Cypreg, who spoke amazingly well about diversity and diversity of thought. And APA has spoken at length over the last year about the need for that one-dimensional conversation, that loudest voice, not to dominate the conversation. We have to understand that in all of the questions of diversity, there is a myriad of voices that over the years have been drowned out by a dominant voice. And because of that, we have, in essence, created the very divisions that one voice has tried to break apart. And it's so hurt so many people that we don't see those privileges now, because that dominant voice has dominated the environment of the conversation. And to say anything outside of that one dominant voice, we belittle everything else, but it's then seen as you're attacking the dominant voice. So the privilege, the elitism that is organically grown because of that scenario, we don't see the privilege, because the dominance of the conversation has become so one-dimensional. And I think you're right. Opening that up is phenomenal. And I'm really glad that you're coming into a sector that is becoming even more aware of the need for that.
Well, that's what I hope for the future, that the accessibility of courses, the choice of different membership bodies, all of this will help people be able to assess courses on the basis of their self-awareness and suitability for being a counsellor, as opposed to it just being about what they can afford to do. That will help diversity in the industry, and all of that will help clients, because I think if we haven't got a diverse industry, then what message are we really giving to clients? We're saying counselling is only for a certain sort of group of people. So I think we do have to challenge what we think of normal. And going back to what I said at the start, that I didn't think this world was for me, because I thought it was for middle class women mainly. That's what kind of the world that I thought. Sorry. I suppose it was that's what I thought was normal. That was my normal at the time. And now just challenging this normal of actually there's a whole load of other people going into counselling training now, and hopefully in the future it's going to completely diversify. All of this will benefit clients, I hope.
And as you've seen in the work that APA's been doing on breaking down those barriers and taking away those boxes, and having the conversation on a human level, which is exactly what Carl Rogers was talking about when he said we have got to get to a point of unconditional positive regard. It doesn't matter what is on the other side of the table. What matters is that they're at the table, and that we're at the table with them at the same point in time, and be there with the person that is in need. And we're not there to fix anybody. We're only there to facilitate their journey with the understanding that we've gained over time. And that's the same for a coach as it is for a therapeutic practitioner. And my hope is that the awareness of someone that has done a mental health first aid course so that they can be on a helpline is not seen in the same light as someone that's done 450 hours of therapeutic work, plus their own therapy, plus their own supervision, etc., etc. These are worlds apart, and we have to change the narrative in the public's mind. And I think with conversations like this, with conversations that we already have in the series, are all kind of pointers towards raising that awareness. So I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Guys, I hope you've enjoyed watching this conversation. As I said right at the top of the show, if you gain anything from this, if there is any benefit to you, please get yourself the CPD questionnaire from the Apple website. Get this to us and get yourself the CPD certificate that goes with this conversation. But for now, I hope we'll see you at the next In Conversation With. For now, have a great day.